Hello, everybody.
Hello.
How's it going? Welcome in. Welcome to a week late episode of Extra Credits Book Club podcast. I'm Dekker. I'm with Nightmother, and we're going to be talking about the absolute rager of a book, Jade City by Fonda Lee. We're 3/4 of the way through it now.
I think we've only got about 100 pages left or something like that.
Boy, oh boy, it's
Yeah. It's one of those. For a while I was like, is this genuinely good, or am I just like traumatized from some really bad books that we've read? But it's genuinely very, very good. Like,
yeah.
the characters are well developed. The plot is a banger. Things have happened that weren't like glaringly obvious, which is just such a nice treat to have after so many awful young adult fantasy books where like the whole plot before you even start reading.
Yeah. And last time, I believe the story was everybody was kind of at each other's throats. Nobody was particularly having a good time.
Yeah, I think Shay and Hilo had an argument in
Yeah.
her apartment about how he was like, "Why did you come back to KCON if you were just gonna not participate in the family and just be here but not be here? Like, what the fuck is up?" And she is she's like both thinking she's this like fierce independent woman, but also like very like things would be so much easier if I just took family help.
Yeah. She was constantly at odds with, like, thinking the cool thing to do was strike out on her own, but she'd never really wanted to do that in the first place. But she felt
No.
like everybody hated her, so she had to. She was very much dead ass wrong in every possible way.
Yeah, 100%.
But I,
But I'm glad that I'm not glad, like, I fucked up and I didn't read the chapter we were supposed to last week, but it kind of works out well
yeah,
in
yeah.
terms of, like, what happens in chapter 28.
Uh, yeah, because we start with Andon, and he's on a super secret mission for Lon.
Mhm.
And he goes and, like, picks up this package and brings it back to his. I can't remember if. I might be mixing this up with what we read last time, where he was, like, teaching him training, or if this was this, like, he was doing deflection training with him.
Yeah, that's this chapter
Okay.
because you read it when we were actually supposed to.
Right. Uh, but he brings the package back to the call house, and as soon as he delivers it, he's like, Lon's like, "Well, how's school, young man?" Like, fine. And he's like, "Okay, well, are you up on your techniques?" And he's like, "Well, I guess my weakest is deflection." He's like, "Then that's where we'll train today." And he's like, "Oh man, I'm
Right
really
now.
tired."
Yeah, I wasn't expecting to train today. And then Lon loses his shit. He's like, "Do you think our enemies care if you're tired?" And Andon's like, "Holy shit, like I've literally
Yeah,
never heard you yell before." I mean, he can see that his Jade aura is kind of erratic and like
he's on
he
edge,
he's
man.
yeah, like they start training and Andon's doing really well and Lon's like, "Great job. Like a lot of adult greenbones can't even do this stuff. Like you'll be totally set once you get out of the academy. Let's do some more." And he's like throwing darts at him and Andon's deflecting them and he's like, "Okay, like I'm on a bit of a tight schedule. Like I'd really like to get back to the academy." And Lon loses his shit. He like grabs him by like the scruff of his neck basically and
Yeah.
he's like his eyes are all fucking weird and Andon is like, I don't know what's happening right now. Like think I just need to go. And Lon immediately like sees the fear of him reflected in Andon's eyes and like calms down. He's like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I haven't been myself lately. Not feeling great. Like I'm under a lot of pressure."
I was injured.
Yeah, he's
I
got
had a
like
workplace
an
accident.
auric injury.
Yeah, and I forget what instigates it, but
He gets a phone call.
right, he gets a phone call and he has to leave. But while he's away, Anton's like, okay, it's really bugging me now. I have to see what's in that envelope. And he goes and, finesses the package open and sees that he's been delivering drugs.
Yeah, to Lon, like the most infallible, purest boy of all.
Yeah.
And it's Shine, the drug that makes, Stone Eyes, people who don't have Jade sensitivities, able to use Jade, I
Yeah.
believe, right? And then but it also, like, helps up your Jade tolerance, like, if you've taken
Yeah.
on
It
too
helps you
much.
mellow out.
Because in the last batch of chapters we read, Lon was in, like, what's the name? It's like a duel of something. They have a name for it, of consequence? No, I'm wrong. But they have like a fight to the death. They have a special name for it, and I can't remember what that is. Is it a trial by consequence?
Something like that.
But Lon won that trial, and he took the guy's Jade because that's custom. Like
Yeah.
with green bones, when you kill a green bone, you're entitled to all of his Jade, and no one can say anything about it. But Lon's really struggling with all this extra Jade, and he keeps thinking that it's an important demonstration of his power and authority by wearing it all the time.
Yeah.
But he's not having an easy time of it because he's both injured from that fight and also it's like past the threshold of Jade he can comfortably manage. So he's been taking drugs to make it easier to carry all this extra Jade.
Yeah. And Lon walks in on Andon peeking into the little package and he's like, oh man, I really wish you wouldn't have seen that.
Yeah. And Andon freaks out because his mom, like, died essentially
Yeah.
because she's been taking Shine and got what they call the itches, where you're literally, like, scratching at she, like, cheese grated her arms essentially, like, trying to not feel it, and Andon's having PTSD flashbacks to this, and he's like, "Oh my god, like, you don't have the itches, do you?" I think that's, like, the first thing he asks him, and Lon's
Yeah.
like, "No, no, no, it's nothing like
Lon's
that,"
like,
like
don't worry. I'm not going to get addicted. And it's like, okay, well, now that you've said it.
I believe you.
I think that's the whole chapter.
Yeah,
Andon
Andon
leaves
is
very
really
upset.
upset. Mhm. And Lon's like, "You cannot tell anybody." Andon's like, "I should probably tell Hilo," but he kind of leaves just feeling really conflicted, and he's not really sure if
Yeah.
he should say anything. He knows he should, but he doesn't wanna betray Lon's trust.
Right.
And he's, like, already the most anxious boy in the world, like, I really felt bad for him here.
Yeah. And then we go from the most anxious boy in the world to the biggest bitch in the whole city.
Yeah.
We're back with Barrow,
Ugh.
failed Jade thief, and he's turned himself into such a greedy is not even the right word. Like he's so thirsty for just the slightest even hint of Jade that he's
Mhm.
like, I don't give a shit. I'll do anything. And he got the last chapter he was in, he got that like machine gun, and
Right.
he was like cradling it like a baby.
Yeah.
Such a loser. And now he's been told like, hey, how do you like them guns we gave you? And he's like, it's so fucking dope. And they're like, okay, cool. Well, we want you to take those guns, and we want you to go down to this strip club that's owned by
Gentleman's club.
yeah, it's a gentleman's, it's a brothel,
Yeah.
and shoot the place up. Just like tear up the walls, make the clientele duck under the tables, freak them out a bit, freak them out a bit. And he's like, yeah, this is my chance
Yeah.
to finally
Finally,
get
I'll
some
get some
Jade.
shade.
Because the nameless Greenbone who's been like giving these guys jobs is like, if you do really well, this is gonna be your shot to the big time. And you can tell by the way he's saying it, he's entirely full of shit.
Mhm.
But Barrow is just like, you're right, this is my shot at the big time. This is how I get me some Jade.
Yeah, he's like, "You're either gonna die or you'll be welcomed into the clan with open arms. All the jade you could want." Like,
Yeah,
it's so obvious that they're not expecting
fully
these boys to
expecting him
come
to
out
be dead.
alive. Yeah.
I also made a note that in this chapter, Barrow keeps acting like he's got this mega chip on his shoulder,
Yeah.
and he's not really done anything to get that chip. Like, he tried to steal Jade unprovoked and failed and got the shit kicked out of him, and now he's just like, I'm gonna get revenge. On who, dude? On who?
Yeah, he's acting
This is
like
your own
he's
fault.
been in yeah, he's acting like he's been entitled to Jade this whole time and that they are withholding it from him
Yeah.
like his birthright, which is not true.
Yeah. It's very weird.
But they are like Cheeky, the other guy they gave a machine gun to, essentially, is with Barrow, and Cheeky's like, "Oh my god, like the Lilac Divine, like that's no peak territory. Like
Yeah.
the Pillar even goes there. Like, are you out of your mind?" And the unnamed Greenbone is like, "You're just figuring that out now. Like you're gonna have to be quicker than that if you expect to live through what we're asking you to do." So
Yeah.
he's like, "You're gonna get a phone call either on like the 1st or the 5th of the month or something like that. Be ready. A car will come pick you up and take you there, and then just unload."
Yeah. Just shoot
And
the
then he
place up.
disappears. Mhm,
Uh, that's that chapter.
mhm. It was a short
Then
one.
we go back to Andon, who, or I guess it's technically Shay,
Yeah.
but she's going to visit Andon.
At
Uh,
like a relay ball tournament at their
Yeah,
school.
which I can only assume is like basketball because what was being described sounded like basketball.
Yeah.
And afterwards, he's like, "Oh my God, Shay, what's up?" And she's like, "Hey, look, Andon, I'm sorry I haven't seen you earlier. Because it
I've
would have
been
been
job hunting.
it
I
would
was
have
so
been
busy.
like the way she phrases it, she essentially says, I'm sorry I didn't see you earlier because it would have been weird for me only.
Yeah. But she does that thing where she makes up her own version of what she was actually doing to make herself sound more busy. She's like, "Oh yeah, like I've just been like job hunting this whole time," when she's been doing none of that. She's like, "I was on a very important like business trip and just like it's been so crazy since I got back. Like I'm only just now like having some free time." And then it's
Yeah.
like, "I don't care."
Okay. Sure, whatever you say. And then they start talking about he tries to be like, "Hey, have you seen Lon recently? Maybe you should check in on him. I'm worried about him and stuff." And she's like, "Don't worry about him. He's fine." Without
She
inquiring further.
No, like, she's just too busy giving him her PR answers about why she stopped being a green bone. She's like, "The clan is all or nothing. I did some things of my own that didn't fit expectations," which is literally her trading family secrets
Yeah,
to
selling state
foreigners
secrets.
and then, like, leaving in shame, essentially. And she's
Yeah.
like, "I learned pretty quick that, like, it wasn't allowed to do things my own way."
And she starts giving Andon advice about how he shouldn't commit himself to the clan because, like, oh, you don't understand what it's like. It's gonna tear you apart and make you all like shitty and stuff, and you shouldn't do that because you're better than that. And he's like, it's wartime. Like, what I want doesn't matter, and what I want is actually to do this. And she's like, but you can't. And I'm like, why is she giving him advice like they're the same?
Yeah, it's very
Also, he
stupid.
never asked.
She thinks that her, like, wisdom is so important to convey to the youth and anyone who will listen. Like,
Yeah.
she's so in this part of like, she's pretty exhausting most of the time, but in these parts especially, she's, like, extra exhausting because she's trying to justify her existence outside and independent of her clan, and it's like, just fucking do what you're supposed to do, like,
She
fall
comes
in line.
across she came across like those mental health advocates who endlessly just barf advice at you but never actually listen to what you're saying
Mhm.
because she was just like hurling advice at him to the point where he's just sitting there like, "All right, I guess I wait my turn then."
Yeah, she's one of those people who, when you speak to her, she's not thinking about or listening to what you're saying, she's thinking about what she's gonna say next,
Yeah.
totally independent of the conversation that you're having.
I think she was talking about how she was going to get a job that's going to send her to Espenia.
Oh, yeah, her
And I was
important
like, "Damn,
finance.
you can't like Espenia again, dude. You just don't learn. Like you can't
Yeah,
go there anymore. Like you can literally, but morally you can't go there anymore."
yeah, she's, like, waiting this whole conversation for him to ask her, like, what she's doing with her life because she hasn't been able to tell anybody about this, like, important job offer she got, and
Yeah.
she's like, "Yeah, it's with an Espanian electronics company," and she's doing, like, regional business development. It sounds so boring, dude. And Andon's like, "Cool," but he's actually, like, crestfallen that she might leave again. She's like, "Yeah, I'd be, like, splitting my time between Espenia and Kegon," and he's like, "Why? Like, why did you come back then?"
Yeah. And she's like, that's a good question." And he's like, "Well, anyway, I gotta go."
Yeah. Like, and she just completely erases any mention, of Andon being like, "Have you seen Lon lately? Like,
Yeah, I'm
do you think
concerned
you
about
should
him.
see a doctor?" She reads into it 0% more, and then kind of, like, realizes it at the end of the conversation. She's like, "Oh, maybe I should have followed up on that. Anyways," and then she, like, goes on gets on the
Yeah.
train.
And then that's the end of that chapter. Chapter 31 is like,
There's a little bit more, where she goes to the temple.
"Oh, that's right. I ignored that cuz I don't give a shit."
It's not really that important, but it is
No.
kind of interesting in like, just from, like, a world building perspective, like,
Right.
she goes to this kind of, like, religious epicenter of Janloon, and it's all the different temples, and we learn a little bit more about, like, the Greenbone religion, deitism, which is, like seems like very on the nose to describe as a
Yeah.
religion, like, you believe in deities? Okay,
Yeah,
cool,
I believe in
and,
gods.
yeah, but she goes to this temple and is kind of like being very self-indulgent with nostalgia about her family's relationship to religion and how they only really went on like important holidays, but they're like the way it, like they have penitents, they call them, like these three, I don't really know. They're almost like monks. Like they sit in shifts around this giant bowling ball sized jade orb, and they just
Yeah.
sit there in silent meditation with their hands on it. And they're green bones, so they're obviously affected by the jade. And then they have to go cold turkey and walk away from it, so that like another shift can come in like every
Right.
3 hours. So they're just constantly in this stage of like coming up on jade and then having jade withdrawals.
Such a flex,
Yeah. Like,
essentially. Like the fact that they have to their job is to sit at this giant piece of ore, jade, touch it for long periods of time, and then just walk away from it when everyone else has like tiny little beads that are no bigger than shirt buttons.
mhm.
And if they have like one of them taken away, they're like, "Oh God!" Ugh.
Yeah. And she's like she's sitting there watching them, and she has the little moment where she realizes that she's gotten, like, everything she wants. She's like, "I have a job offer in my own place, like, I'm so independent." And but then she's like, "Why aren't I happier?"
Yeah.
And, like, wow, who could have seen that coming?
she really is still figuring out stuff that everybody else has
Yeah.
ages ago. But in the next chapter, where Lon is full like junkie mode.
Yeah.
He's at the brothel, and he's just smashed it out with his go-to girl.
Well, he's at home first for a little bit because he has a phone call with Hilo.
Oh, that's right.
And
Where he's like, "Yeah, we found out there's some dope evidence against Doru.
Doru.
But like, I'll let you know when we go get him." And that's
Yeah.
when Lon's like, "Okay, I'm sick of waiting around for this phone call. I'm gonna go nut one out."
Well, he's like he tells Hilo who the new weatherman will be, and he's like, take Doru wherever you're gonna take him. I'll come and meet you and deal with him myself. But he also has a moment where he notices he's just received a letter from his ex-wife,
Oh
and we
yeah,
get a bit more information about what happened with his marriage, and I just feel so bad for him because it's that classic, like, "I can handle being your wife when you're the pillar, like, I don't mind. I can, you know, bide my time and do things on my own, and I don't need you around all the time." And then she immediately has an affair, and
yeah.
she's like, when pressed,
Because he's too
"He's
exciting.
he's there for me. He can go on vacation whenever." That was literally, like, her main
Yeah.
point is, like, we could just go on trips. Like, okay.
I was like, man, that is, of all the things in this whole book, that is the biggest fabrication. The notion that some woman who is super like, yeah, of course I'll be good with being famous and stuff. And then when she gets the chance to be famous, is like, no, I don't like it. Nice try. That person doesn't
Yeah.
exist. Even
Well,
if they don't like it, they'll force it because
yeah.
it's what they
I don't
want.
know. I don't know. Well, she seemed like she was just really upset that he couldn't spend time with her. And she's like, "I found someone who will spend time with me." But maybe he's like independently wealthy and it made it easier. Like, we don't really know what he did for a living.
True. I forgot about that letter. I was like, they better not leave this unresolved.
Well,
But he eventually makes his way to the brothel,
yes.
smashes one out, and then he's just kind of like, afterwards, he's like, okay, now get out.
Yeah, it's
And
really
she's
rude.
like, okay, it's not
She's like
really like you, but all right.
she's really mad about it. She's like, "You can't just dismiss me. This is like my house, dude."
Yeah, and he puts on all of his Jade again. Just, he's in a real bad way. Like, he has to, like, clutch the bed to steady himself as he is on the come up.
Yeah.
And I believe he said he hadn't taken his shine for like 8 days.
Mhm.
And then he was like, okay, this is really bad. So he takes his shine. And at the same time, Barrow and his cronies are coming down the street. And I was like, oh shit. Is who's going to, like, this is not going to work out for Barrow. He's
Yeah.
super jaded up. And bullets don't mean it. Like, we've established 2 chapters ago that Lon is super dope at deflecting bullets.
Yeah, he can just, like, Neo style hold his hand up and they all just kinda, like, veer
Yeah,
off into other
he can
directions.
like swing him around and shoot him back at you.
Mhm.
But he leaves the brothel to get a taxi to go back home so he can actually wait for the phone call.
Right.
Because he was like, I shouldn't have come here in the first place. It was a bit reckless. I gotta go. So he gets in a taxi, like right as Barrow and Smiley,
Cheeky.
Cheeky, turn
Same
up.
thing.
And Barrow, in his infinite wisdom, recognizes Lon and is like, "That's what we were sent here to do. Kill the pillar." And then he tells the driver, "Follow that car." And the driver's
Yeah.
just like, "Okay, dude. Get in trouble then."
Cheeky's like, "What the fuck are you doing? That's not why we're here. We're supposed to shoot up the place." And Barrow's like, "No, like everything's lining up for me right now, dude. Like
Yeah.
this,
Everything's
this
coming
is
up,
the
Barrow.
universe." Yeah. And he thinks it's like a sign from the gods that he's meant to be pursuing and murdering Lon. So
Yeah.
they just
And
like start following the cab.
Lon instantly clocks them because he's so jacked up on Jade that he's probably sensing like what people are thinking 4 blocks down.
Yeah.
And he, as soon as he realizes that there's people in the vicinity that want to do him harm, he like ditches the cab immediately and starts like zigzagging his way through streets.
Mm-hmm.
And Barrow and Cheeky are just like, "Oh man, we lost him immediately. Oh, what are we gonna do now? I guess we better go back to shoot up the place that we were supposed to initially." But Barrow's like, "No, I have to find him."
Yeah. And I think Lon goes down, he gets down into like the harbor and starts walking around on the docks, and he's confident that he's lost them.
Yeah,
And so he's like, "I'm just going to walk around here for a little bit and I'll go catch another cab and continue on my way." And then he starts getting really intense chest pain. And
yeah.
he's like, "What the fuck's happening? Like,
Am I
I'm,"
having a heart attack?
yeah, he's like, "I've never had pain like this before." And I think he realizes that he is essentially he's, like, overdosing
Yeah,
on shine because
because he
he
should have given
was,
himself a half dose.
yeah, and he's, like, steadying himself and trying to get his composure back, and realizes that Barrow and Cheeky have snuck up on him, and he's
Right.
astonished that they
Through
managed to sneak up on him.
through pure happenstance,
Yeah, no
Barrow
skill involved.
Barrow spots Lon through like the corner of his eye, and he goes, "Hey, that's him." Cheeky's like, "Give me a break, dude. Let's go back to the place and shoot it up like we're supposed to." And he's like, "No, I know it's him, even though it's just a silhouette."
Mhm.
And while Lon is in the process of having his like overdose stroke,
Mhm.
they sneak up on him and open fire. And in his weakened state, Lon puts up a deflection that none of the bullets hit him. In fact, he swings several of them around to shoot back at Cheeky, killing him and wounding Barrow. And Barrow runs away like the bitch he is. And then Lon is like, "Haha, nice try," and starts leaving and then goes, "Oh no, my body did not like that."
Yeah, he like Barrow at one point finally has the good sense to be afraid. And I think Lon kind of gets him in a chokehold. And he's like, "Is this what you want? Like, this is what it's all come to," and
Right.
starts threatening him. And then I think his body starts like shutting down on him. And
Yeah.
Barrow gets away and manages to like run. And Lon tries to like makes to go after him, and then he starts feeling like he's, like, fully on fire, like, he starts
Hmm.
feeling really hot, and he's like, "I gotta cool down. This isn't good."
Yeah. I think he was in the like moments before breaking Barrow's neck. His body's like red alert.
Yeah.
And because he's so hot, the drug-addled mind decides that the best course of action is to throw himself into the ocean. And so
Yeah.
he does.
Yeah, it goes for a little swim.
And I was like, okay. And then the next chapter is, well, it's not really a chapter, it's an interlude, where we essentially get the Kekanese version of Noah's Ark without the Ark.
Yeah.
Because it's just about a dude who spends like 40 years scouring the earth lives to be like 300, and becomes one of the dopest, most raddest fighters who's ever been.
Kind of like Rasputin in Siberia.
Yeah, without all the alcohol.
Yeah, and orgies. Well, I don't know. He might have had orgies. We shouldn't assume.
I mean, you live 300 years, there's got to be at least one.
True.
But anyway, the next chapter, 32, we find out that Lon's fucking dead.
Yeah. I was I didn't think that was gonna be a thing. But Hilo calls Shay, and Shay's like, "What's up?" He's like, "You need to come to the house right now." She's like, "Why?" Like, "I'm kind of busy with my job offers."
Yeah.
And he tells her that Lon's dead.
Yeah, he drowned.
It was wild.
He, which is, if you remember back in the first episode, I was certain that Hilo was going to be the one who was killed.
And not even in this book, in the next one.
Yeah. But what a twist. I was not expecting that at all.
No, me neither. I thought Lon was just like a forever character. Like, he seemed to be kind of like the truest protagonist to me
Yeah,
out of all of
kinda.
them. Like, even though we get chapters essentially from different character perspectives each
Yeah.
chapter, he felt very important. But
There's
maybe it was like the Ned Stark syndrome where it's
right.
like, oh, he's the first. Well, he wasn't even the first character, but he's like at the head of this hierarchy. So you're like, oh,
In
he's
Game of
safe.
Thrones, he was the first POV character. The book
Yeah,
starts
he
with
was.
him.
Sorry. I was thinking about Lon because he wasn't the
Oh,
first.
right,
POV.
right, 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 right. I think this chapter is fairly short because one of my only notes is I guess it took her fucking brother dying to finally do what she's always wanted to do in the first place.
Yeah, which is
Because
really too bad.
he's like, Hilo essentially tells her, like, I need you to be the weatherman.
Yeah, basically. I think he doesn't say it outright yet.
No, he does
Um,
say, like, we're, like, mount up because we're finna roll these streets over.
yeah, because they assume he was assassinated by the Mountain Clan. And
Right.
Hilo's like, I am gonna kill them all.
All of them. And I think the next chapter they just go straight into like we're finna burn this whole place down.
Basically, yeah. Because I think the chapter is called Down from the Forest, and that's like the secret language of like means that it's just all out
Yeah.
clan warfare, essentially.
When they refer to clans coming down from the forest, it means they're coming down looking to fucking fight.
Mm-hmm.
But also this is where I get confused, right? Because when they snatched up Andon way back when, they were really nervous about Hilo retaliating for it. And every communication they had with Lon, they were like, make sure that Hilo is on a leash because we don't want no trouble with him. And the Mountain have been kind of operating in a way where they're trying to avoid every possible confrontation with Hilo because they know he is really good at fighting
Yeah.
and taking other people's jade.
And they've been kind of quietly trying to dispatch of Hilo as
Yeah.
well. And well, and also not so quietly when they like basically got all of those assassins to try and kill him that one time.
Yeah. So it was weird to me because even though technically it was some random dude who hired Barrow to go shoot up the thing, it was the Mountain for sure
Yeah.
that are behind hiring that moron to go shoot up the club. And it was just dumb fucking luck that Barrow decided to get it in his head that he was going to kill the pillar didn't kill him, and then he drowned coincidentally. So I was
Yes.
like, okay, what if Hilo is the one they're the most afraid of, then why would they ever put Lon in a position that he could have been killed and then be succeeded by their worst nightmare?
I know. But maybe they only are concerned about him being the horn and not so much the pillar, because I don't know how intimidated they are with him at, like, the helm of the family when he's not experienced as a pillar. Like, it means
Yeah,
he
true.
can't be on the streets, like, taking territories and commanding his fists to the same level of,
Right.
like, intentionality as he's been able to do.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, yeah.
But all that aside, we get a great blitzkrieg montage
Yeah.
where everybody, like all of the No Peak clan Greenbones, are rolling through the mountain territory, smashing shit up, killing dudes. Shay kills like 3 people for free.
Yeah,
Turns out
and
she's
is
a
like,
really good fighter.
yeah. She's like, "Oh, this is just like a training exercise at school." But Hilo, before they go, like, they plan this whole, like, ambush that, or not an ambush, but it was like a ruse. Like, they all make a big show of, like, having their big convoy of, like, fancy cars and
Oh
motorcycles,
yeah.
like, show up somewhere, and, then they actually take a bunch of, like, nondescript cars and go and, like, hit all these different places in the armpit, and, I think, Shay and her team are at, like, a casino, and they're just like, "Kill everybody with Jade."
Yeah.
But I think, doesn't Hilo have, like, a moment where he, like, screams at the sky before they all
Yes.
start?
Yeah, he does like the Aragorn ah.
Yeah, like, at the gates of Mordor.
Yeah. No, when he kicks the helmet.
Oh, yeah.
It's like that level of scream where it's just like, all right, tone it back.
And he's, like, the only one screaming, and everyone else is just standing quietly
Yeah.
nearby, and
He's
they're
just
like,
super mad.
"Yay." Oh, but okay, so then they hit all these places, they retake the armpit, and then Gaunt, the Horn of the Mountain, gets a phone call, and he is so upset by the news that he, like, rips the phone out of the wall and throws it into the opposite wall, and it gets stuck there.
Yeah, we love to see it. I
And
love
then,
rage induced like property destruction.
yeah, and then he delivers, like, a really cheesy line after where he's like, "Call Lon is dead. His family has come down from the forest. We are now at open war with No Peak. Their lives and livelihoods are for the taking, and Jade goes to the victor."
Right.
It's like, "Calm down. You're not in a movie. It's fine."
Yeah. But they love that shit. Like when Elo was doing his like screaming at the wall,
Yeah.
he did another dumbass speech.
I
And
think
everyone
he
was like, yeah, 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 yeah.
he was, like, screaming, "Can you hear me? I'm ready to die."
Yeah.
Like, verbatim.
Very weird. And I think that's the whole chapter.
Yeah, it's just absolute brutality enacted by the No Peak clan, and then
Very
Gaunt
good
throws a
stuff.
phone. Mhm.
But the next chapter, Shay goes to see this whole chapter
How come?
because Shay goes to see Doru.
Oh, not yet. This is her and Hilo in the kitchen.
Oh, yeah, right. I left that part out. I didn't write any notes about that because it wasn't particularly like she's really prickly for no reason.
She's just so competitive with Hilo, and Hilo could care less. He's like, "I just want my family nearby." Like, he's genuinely the most caring member of the family, even though he's kind of like the most
Yeah.
drywall punchy out of the whole family. Like, he just wants his family to do what they're supposed to do, and they all want to do those things. So it's not like he's trying to force them into roles that they don't want to be in. He's
Yeah.
just like, "I don't understand why you're competing with me or why you make everything like a fight. I just want you to be in my life and do
Yeah.
your job."
I forgot
But
he was eating cereal.
yeah, she basically like, she wakes up in her childhood bed and has a little cry, and then she looks in the mirror and she's like, "I don't look like a Jade warrior. I just look like a victim of domestic abuse." And it's like, "Whoa."
Okay.
Like, cool.
Didn't realize you were
Anyways,
shooting for the oppression Olympics.
yeah. So she goes to the kitchen, Hilo's there having his little cereal, and I think that's when, she asks about their granda, and Hilo's
Oh
like,
yeah.
"Oh, we had to heavily sedate him." Like, he's basically had to be put in, like, a medically induced coma because of like, aggressive dementia he's having
Yeah.
about Lon being dead, thinking it's his son being dead again, and blames Hilo for Lon dying, and they're like, "Just sedate him, like, put him in a straitjacket and give him an enema."
Just put a
And
pillow over his face at this point. Be done with it.
fully. And that's when she's like Hilo's like, "I need you to be my weatherman." And then she, like,
Yeah.
takes the oath, and I think it's interesting, though, that the stories evolved this way because they're the siblings who have been kind of at odds more than, like, Lon ever was with either one of them, and
Mhm.
he was always the peacekeeper between the 2 of them, and so now they're gonna have to overcome their
You could
sibling rivalry differences.
argue that Lon, because he was the peacekeeper, was a terrible pillar.
Well, for where they're at right now, he would have been a he's a great political peacetime pillar, but he's
Right.
not the right pillar for, like, these escalating tensions with another clan because
Yeah.
he's just not interested in
Every
participating.
time his boundaries were tested, he just kind of like stepped back. Like, no,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. You've got to push
Mhm.
back a little bit harder.
Yeah, he just opted out.
But this is when Shay, after she gives the weatherman oath, then she's like, "Well, I guess I better go tell Doru the good news." And she'd heard that they removed his jade and just were like keeping him in his house with and she like goes in there and he's got 2 guards and he's on the couch looking like he's hungover. Like he's got a wet towel over his face. And the exchange is bizarre because nothing really gets solved. She's like, "How could you do it?" And he's like, "I did it because it was the right thing to do."
Yeah, there's actually so that's in chapter 37. There's still 2 other chapters before we get
What?
to Yeah. This is like what I did last time with the conversation between Hilo
Well,
and Wen. But there's, like, Barrow again, and then it's, Lon's funeral, and then Shay goes to visit Doru.
right.
These chapters
They
super
all
blur
blend
together.
together because it feels like one giant chapter.
It does. Basically, like, Barrow in chapter 35 comes back from thinking that he
Oh yeah,
has
he thinks
killed
he killed him. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
he's kind of, like, parading around on the streets being like, "If only these guys knew what I've done, they would
Yeah,
be bowing to me," and
literally
he expects
like standing in the corner meme of the party. Like they don't know that I just killed Pillar Long Call.
Yeah, he thinks he's gonna get, like, a hero's welcome when he gets back to Moot's shop,
Yeah.
and Moot's like, "What the fuck? How are you here right now?" And Barrow's like, "I did what I was supposed to do. I knew in my heart that when you sent me to that casino, to that gentleman's club, it was to kill Lon." And Moot's like, "You were supposed to just go and kind of irritate him and
Yeah.
ruin his day a little bit. maybe fuck up his car. Like, you were not under any circumstance supposed to kill him. He's like, "Well, where's my Jade? Like, I did the thing." And he's like, "What do you mean, where's your Jade? Like, you have to leave the city
Yeah.
right now because you are dead, my guy."
He's
And
like,
he's like,
damn,
"What?"
you did exactly the thing you weren't supposed to do. I
The
can't
one
believe
thing.
how, like, this is stratosphere level dumb fuckery. And he's like, yeah, but I killed him. And he's like, yeah, I doubt it.
Yeah. Yeah, like, even though Lon is dead, and even though Barrow was meant to be in the same vicinity as him with a machine gun, like, you really have to suspend your expectations in order to, like, even
Yeah.
consider that
He's like,
Barrow had.
because Barrow was like, yeah, I had this machine gun, man. I killed him. And the guy's like, you could have had 50 machine guns, dipshit. None of them would have touched you. How do you understand how powerful he is? You did not
Yeah.
kill him.
Yeah,
It really, it was just sugar on top of a nice little cake. Because
yeah,
I
he's
love
like,
it when Barrow gets embarrassed more.
yeah, and I mean, he gets sent down. Moot has this like secret trapdoor basement that has a tunnel leading out of the city. And he's like, go down into the basement, get out of the city that way. I'm gonna help you because you just earned me a fuck ton of money. And like, I feel kind of bad for you. So, and he's like, I don't want to fuck with whatever type of like luck situation you have going on for you because it's clearly something.
Yeah.
So go down here, and then Barrow has a moment when he's in the basement. He's like, "Oh fuck, was I just like lured down to a basement to be murdered?" But he sees the tunnel after a bit, and he starts making his way out of the city.
I hope.
And I mean, we can only hope that this is the last we hear of him, but I doubt it.
The next chapter is Lon's funeral. Rip Lon, he was a rest in power hero.
Let the gods recognize him.
Yeah. It's like, you know, the mafia, whenever they mention, like the Italian mob, whenever they mention someone dead, it's always, may God rest his soul.
Yeah.
May the spirits recognize him. Don't too soon. This is where I wrote the note that Hilo is honestly the best boy in the Call family, but he's treated the worst.
I know. Like he's consoling the whole family. He tells his mom he loves her. She says nothing.
Yeah,
You're
she's just like, get away from me. His dad, his grandda is a vegetable.
yeah. He has a cute moment with Wen when because he's really nervous about the way that like the political dudes are, like, I think it was like a chancellor or councilman or something, and starts making like thinly veiled threats about how he thinks Hilo isn't shit and how like he hopes Hilo will continue to do the good work that his brother
Right.
was doing. And they're all giving these like collection envelopes of money and so Hilo will find out later like how much support he actually has from the Lantern Men and members of like the board that they run.
Yeah.
And Wen's like, the Lantern Men don't need tax cuts right now. Like, you're going to be a great wartime pillar. It's going to be fine. Like, you're the right person to be in this position right now. Um, and then Andon comes up to him and he's like, I need to talk to you. Like, you can tell that Andon, there's no way he doesn't blame himself exclusively for Lon's death.
Yeah.
Because that's just the kind of guy he is, which I get it. He's like, he tells Hilo that Lon was taking shine, and Hilo like interrupts him basically. He's like, I don't want you to fucking ever say that ever again. Like, don't you repeat that to anybody here. He was killed by the mountain. No one can believe anything else.
Right.
That's that. No more conversations. And Andon just kind of like wrings his hands together and like runs away.
The little Dragon Age thing pops up on the side of the screen that says Andon disliked that.
Yeah.
Andon disapproves. Strongly disapproves.
Strongly disapproves.
Because then Andon just kind of like drifts off.
Yeah.
After
I think
Hilo does that, Andon just kind of like turns into a wraith and vanishes. Like
yeah.
that killed him.
yeah. Like it turns into mist and just like materializes out.
And then I forget who Hilo tells, but he's like, "Don't worry." Is he talking to Lon's grave? I think he is, because he's like, "Don't worry. I put all of your jade stitched into like this vellum underneath your coffin, so no one could take it from you." And I was like, "Great, that jade is 100% getting stolen."
I didn't even think about that.
Because
But yeah,
why? Let's Chekhov's jade.
it's gonna be like when Voldemort came and desecrated Dumbledore's tomb to take his wand.
Right.
It's gonna be just like that. But they also I can't remember who, I think it's Hilo just reflecting to himself. He's like when they sedated their granda, they like removed a bunch of his jade and hid it
Yeah.
so that he wouldn't be so unhinged and like trying to fight everybody all the time. And he doesn't even notice that his jade is gone. And Hilo's like, that's honestly kind of sad because that means he's probably not long for this world. We'll probably be back here in this graveyard pretty soon for
Yeah.
him.
But like, I don't. They coddle that son of a bitch.
Yeah, just kill him.
He's
Like, who
such an
fucking
asshole to
cares?
everybody. And they still
Yeah.
treat him like he's the great paragon of the family. And I'm like, he's not. Like, he beat up
No,
Lon for no reason.
and his best friend is a filthy pedophile who's been
Ugh.
betraying the family for years. Like, fucking chill.
Oh, that's right. This is the chapter where Shay goes to Doru's house that's now her house.
Mhm.
And she talks to him, and basically he explains that he wanted things to go back to the way they were, like
Yeah.
before the war was over, back when the two clans were the one clan. And I'm like, this is so boring.
I
Not
know.
in a story sense, but in the fact that they wanted to go back to the good old days is so sad.
It's
It's
very boomer.
yeah. Um and the things that he was describing as like what he did to hopefully get back to those good old days, I was like, man, this dude sucked at being a weatherman. How did he stay in this job for so long?
I know. Like he was just putting money into different businesses, but was
Not really paying attention to how much or what they did with it.
yeah. And the fact that he was helping the mountain, like, mine jade that's not being accounted for and doing nothing to help No Peak. Like he was still
Yeah.
helping the mountain get an unfair advantage. Like I don't think he knows what's going on with the jade that
He
they haven't counted
The
for.
way he described it, he was like, I was helping the mountain as a way to like build a bridge between us, but I was like, you dumb fucking old man. They
Yeah.
were just taking you for everything you were worth. Like, yeah, of
Yeah.
course, if you go, hey, you guys want information on this so that we can get back together, they'd be like, sure. Why don't you just hand over that information and we'll get right on getting back together?
Yeah, Doru thinks that the mountain wants the clans to merge and be equals, but the mountain just wants to absorb No Peak and be
Yeah.
one clan, but one clan with the other one like subjugated, not what Doru thinks is
It's
happening.
the same mentality as the Borg.
Yeah. And he's like, I was loyal to your granddad, like, more than anybody, like, more than you, more than the family, more than the clan. Like, I knew what he wanted before he even knew what he wanted. I knew when he said this thing, it meant go do this thing. And like,
I'm not sure that's true. You may think it's
no.
true, but I don't think it's true.
Yeah, exactly.
And then after all this, Shay makes one of the most catastrophically dumb fuck decisions this book will probably ever see. She says, I'll make sure that you're not killed for your treason if you go and keep my grandpa company. I'm like, this is
Yeah,
only ever going to go bad. This is such a terrible, terrible mistake you're making.
yeah. And
Because the
he's like,
whole
"Oh my
time he
god,
was
you
sitting there
fucked
like, oh, I'm just a frail old man. Oh, I can barely stand without my Jade.
yeah."
And she
Yeah.
started to feel bad for him because Shay's a sucker. She
She's
got
a
took with
sucker for
that.
disgusting old men, specifically.
Uh, yeah. Because she has a really fond spot for her grandpa, too. And he's nothing but an asshole.
Yeah.
Except to her, which is fine by her. She doesn't care that he's rude to anybody else. She's like, well, he's nice to me.
Yeah, she's like, "Just go play chess with Granda every day under the cherry trees and
And
have
he
oatmeal with him and be his life partner."
and Doru's just like, oh yes, I would be happy to do that. And I'm like, oh god, he's gonna escape somehow. Watch.
Yeah. And I think that's the end of that chapter.
Yeah, because the next chapter is the mountain completely running unopposed through the entire No Peak territory. Like
Yeah, they really fuck it up.
it's like Poland, 1938. No one was there to stop them. They just got bowled over.
Yeah. We're back at the Twice Lucky Diner and Mr. Une, who we met at the very, very beginning of the book.
Hmm?
And the Twice Lucky Diner is kind of like
It's
uh
the premier No Peak hangout.
mhm, with the best crispy squid. And these two no peak green bones come in and post up in there and he's like, "Are you guys expecting trouble?" And they're like, maybe."
Yeah.
And they're there for a while. The phone rings. One of the green bones, Sato, picks it up and they get information that the mountain is attacking the docks and Une needs to send all the customers home immediately and they're kind of like boarding up the windows and closing all the blinds. And Mr. Une is kind of worried. He's like, "Just you guys are here? Like, it's just gonna be you two? Is that fine?" They're like, maybe." But then 3 more No Peak clan members come bursting through the door, and they're like, "Gaunt himself is here,
Yeah.
leading the attack. They've taken everything in another area nearby." And then this car shows up and just starts, like, unloading bullets into the diner. And Mr. Une hides behind the counter, and he's just, like, waiting to see how much damage his diner is gonna take before they stop, and he's, like, not so much afraid, but he's, like, irritated at the property damage that's
He's
happening
inconvenienced. Because it seems to
greatly.
be that Lantern Men aren't necessarily worried about, like, the sense that I get is that Lantern Men generally don't care about clan wars because whoever comes out on top, they're gonna get paid.
Yeah.
Or they can just like leave. Like they can get out of the game scot-free.
Yeah, because when No Peak ran through Armpit territory, which I think had some mountain businesses, when they like, the carnage had ended, they were basically like, "Any of you guys want to change allegiance and, like, pledge loyalty to No Peak, this is your time to do that. Everybody else can leave," and a lot of them were just like, "Nope, I'm good. No Peak for life."
Yeah. And Gaunt just steamrolls through everybody who's at the Twice Lucky. Like I think they made it seem like Khan is just ripped in half.
Yeah, was he? Like, that I think Mr. Une gets out from underneath the counter, and he sees the lower half of
Yeah.
Khan's body.
That could
I'm like, "Does
either
that
be he
mean"
couldn't see the upper half, or that
or it's gone.
poor Khan has been cut in half. But
Yeah.
if there's one thing, like one complaint that I have broadly about this book, is that Fonda Lee doesn't write action. Like, there's no fights.
No, it all happens kind of, like, off screen.
Yeah.
Like, except for a few battles, but they're kind of hard to picture because a lot of it involves techniques that she's created, like all of the kind of green bone fighting styles where it's like
Yeah.
they use steel to do this, and it's like, what does that look
It's
like
hard to
from a body
envision.
language perspective? Yeah, and it's like deflected this, used lightness for this, and it's like, what do these actions involve? Like
I don't know what
it's
you're
not like
saying.
at least in The Witcher, like you can imagine what a half pirouette looks like.
Yeah.
Even though it's used egregiously, like, you can s it's like the way that The Witcher is written is the equivalent of, like, Geralt with this helicopter blade just
Yeah.
running
That's all he
through
does.
battalions, yeah. Just half full semi pirouettes.
Uh, but Gaunt is like, there's this whole. I liken it to the scene from Inglorious Bastards where, um, Christoph Waltz's character drinking milk in that guy's shed,
Same energy.
where he's very threateningly enjoying the crispy squid,
Yeah.
and then says, "So we're gonna be taking your business," and he's like, "No, no, no, I'm loyal to No Peak," and he goes, "Okay, that's fine. Then we'll just burn down your business." And he's like, "You can't do this." And he really has a crisis of conscience for about 4.5 seconds. Then he goes, "Okay, I'll switch sides."
Yeah, I've always loved the Mountain Clan.
So I guess Mr. Une isn't that loyal after all.
Even though I think a lot of his family is in No Peak.
Yeah,
Like,
because he
think of
says like my cousin's a fist.
yeah.
Several of my like brothers and sisters are uh luck bringers,
Mhm.
and Gaunt is just like, well, I don't care.
Yeah.
You
Let
want
me
your
see your
place burnt
ledger.
down or what?
Yeah. He's like, "I guess not."
And that's that chapter. 39 is more. I think it's just Shay. Shay's doing like her politicking.
And it's actually very nice to see. Like,
Yeah,
this is
she's
where
good at
Shay
it.
is yeah, she really shines in this role, and she becomes a lot more tolerable to spend time with when she's in her strategy mindset. Like, it's I hate that I'm making this comparison, but she is so much better at doing it. Like, it's just nice to read someone doing politicking well, as opposed to, like, Feyre in A Court of Wings and Ruin when she's undercover at the Spring Court again after being High Lady of the Night Court, and she, like, thinks that every one of her looks, like, conveys so much more than it does, or, like, her facade is, like, so, like, imperious and sneaky and, like, seductive, but also covert and, like,
Oh my god.
just thinks she's so much better at this than she actually is. Meanwhile, Shay is genuinely very good at kind of, like, playing people against each other and
Yeah.
understanding the landscape that she's working in.
And she's really great at politics in the sense that she knows that it's tit for tat. Like, I will do this thing for you if you do this thing for me.
Mhm.
Or making people seem like they're like making it seem like her idea is their idea,
Yeah,
which
and
is,
also making it seem like they're, she's asking for people's advice to kind of butter them up when really she's already made up her mind about something.
yeah. But essentially it boils down to her kind of chatting with the guy that Lon was going to make weatherman, and being like, "You
Woon.
can be my chief of staff," um, which is something I heard in Hesperia. Turns out that's a term they use for second in command.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Okay." Like, he makes no real response to that. He's just like, "Whatever you say."
He's just happy that she's not gonna kill him because he essentially failed in his
Right.
pillar man duties the night Lon died because he was supposed to know where he was and what he was doing and to look out for him, and, like, he basically died on his watch.
Yeah.
So he's like, "If I get out of this alive, hell yeah."
Uh, and then she says, who would make for the best, I forget what the term was, but it was like Master,
Luckbringer.
oh, was it Master Luckbringer?
Mhm.
And he's like, "Oh, it's this cat named uh,
Tommy Tumashan.
Tommy," that's what it was. So she's like, "Okay, cool, thank you for your input, now bye-bye." And he leaves. She meets with this Hami, and she kind of knew about, like, she knew of this guy, knew what he was about, so she could tailor her experience around dealing with him, and essentially was like, "Hey, I'm thinking of making a chief of staff. Who would be great in that position?" He's like, "Oh, it's that uh boy, what I forget his name.
Woon?
Woon." And she's like, "Oh, okay, great. I'll talk to him about that." So she made it seem like both of those appointments were other people's ideas, even though she knew exactly who she was going to pick from the get-go.
Yeah, that's
It's
great. Mhm. She also does a good job of kind of like humbling herself a little bit because she knows that he would not respect what she's about to say to him or take her seriously if she came in like an entitled little girl.
right.
And she basically is like, "Listen, I know I'm not supposed to be here yet," but it's very clear to like align herself in the perspective of like, I was a weatherman in training. I was meant to do this job my whole life. I'm just here a little earlier than expected. So, like, where how can I earn the respect of the individuals I need to? Where can I look to get support from? What do I need to do to earn respect? And also, how many people in the office would you say are loyal to Doru, and who would be a problem if they remained in their current roles?
Yeah.
And she knows that she kinda gets confirmation that he was kind of anti-Doru, and he's like, "Honestly, there's not many people here who were on his side. People think he should have retired, like, 5 years ago." So
Yeah.
they kind of have that commonality that she was able to establish, which is great.
Um, forget what the next chapter is.
There's one more thing that happens in this chapter where she goes to like host kind of that board meeting. So she's in the weatherman's office. I think it's on Ship Street. She's like dressing to look older,
Oh,
but she's
that's
like
right.
showing off her like bougie two-tiered jade like choker
Mhm.
and delivers a like a well-articulated speech about um I don't really remember what it's about, but she's basically just updating everybody what's going on, but then before she makes any changes, she gets Hami to say what those changes are because they already know and respect him. So
Right.
it's not like she's coming in with her like newfangled ideas and changing shit from a place of like total inexperience. And I think she's just talking about like the Royal Council or the KJA's like audit that's going on, how the mountain's been fucking shit up and how they're not gonna stand for that. Like it's the political version of like Hilo yelling at the sky.
Yeah. That is why I don't remember. Because as soon as she started like talking about that audit stuff, I was like, my eyes just glazed over.
Yeah, who cares? But then she gets back to her office and she gets a phone call, and this guy keeps demanding to speak to Doro, and we
Oh
find out
yeah.
Minister of Tourism, and he's like, travel advisories are in place because there's clans warring. Like, this is fucking out of control. Our tourism is gonna go down. Where's Doru? And she's like, he's indisposed. He's under guard. Or no,
Yeah.
he's away for his health.
He's feeling ill.
Yeah, she's like, I'm the weatherman. And then she has a bunch of files that were extracted from Doru's private kind of filing cabinets, and she sits down to start going through a mass amount of paperwork so she can figure out what the fuck he was doing. And that's the end of that chapter.
Chapter 39?
Yeah.
No, I really don't know what happens in chapter 40.
Okay, so we're with Hilo. He is in Lon's study and he's feeling very like he's like, what the fuck are all these books about, dude? Like, did Lon actually like read all these books?
What about all these
And
books?
yeah, he finds out like he's with Ken and Tar, and oh no, that's not right. Um, oh wait, no, that is right. He's with. So I had to reread this in the physical book because I was like dissociating during this chapter too.
Right.
So he's talking to Ken and Tar, and he's really like he's just in a bad mood. Like he's not vibing with being the horn or with being the pillar.
Oh, now I
There's
remember. Yeah.
They're having a conversation. Wen is there. She's like giving them watermelon, and he's like, "Oh, this is the only good thing about my life right now." Is like Wen lives with Ken and Tar because he made Ken the new horn.
Right.
And he's having a conversation with the two of them, and he finds out the Twice Lucky has been taken by the Mountain, and then they find out about all of the different territories that the Mountain has done,
Like all of
like
them.
has taken. Yeah, the docks. They've killed like 11 fingers, 3 fists, and Gaunt is like camped out in the Twice Lucky. And Hilo's like, we're not gonna go back down there right now. Like the cost is too high. Ken's like, okay, well, when are we gonna strike back? And Hilo's like, you're the fucking horn now. That's your call to make. And
Yeah.
Ken is clearly having a hard time adjusting to this new like authoritative role. Like he's still very much looking to Hilo for like directions and orders. And that's not what he's supposed to be doing anymore. But I really feel for him because he kind of got promoted too soon. And they all kind of did. So like Hilo's struggling because he was never supposed to be the pillar.
Yeah.
Like
he was never he's never had to think about like the big picture.
Exactly. It's very much like this territory, what do I need to do here?
Mhm.
This territory, what do I need to do here? And he's really good at reading people and having those like one-on-one relationships with them and anticipating their needs. And that's great from somebody who needs to like manage a lot of people in high stakes situations. Like he's perfect as the horn. He was born to be the horn, and now he can't do that anymore. And he's really having a tough time adjusting. And he makes Tar his pillar man, and Tar is mortified. He's like, have I failed you that badly? Like, what the fuck? I'm not a secretary. And he's like, no, like, that's not what I'm going to get you to do. Like, you're going to have people to manage. Like, I'm going to get you to do other stuff. I'm not the same pillar that Lon was. These roles are not going to be the same thing they were when Lon was pillar. And they're like, he's really ornery and he's just like, kind of chastising them. Ken's like, okay, like, I get that you're not really in a great spot right now. We'll leave. We'll come back when you're feeling better. But they're like kind of prickly about the fact that Hilo's being so hard on them. And he's like, you guys are my brothers now. Like, I'm marrying your sister. I wouldn't be like talking to you like this if you weren't my family. So that was kind of cute. But then Shay comes in and they can all feel her aura and they're like, oh,
yeah,
I'll leave. Like,
I think that's why they
we'll
all
come back
leave
later. Yeah. And then Shay comes in. She's like, you need to talk to the Royal Council. They are getting nervous. And he's like, oh, but like the politics are just not for me. Like he literally says
really
it's not for me.
for it.
Yeah. And I think she's just like literally the way that she talks to him about needing to meet with the royal council, or like these terrible things will happen, like she describes like a cataclysm of events will happen if he doesn't do this one thing. And it's the same energy as like when I was maybe like 12 or 13, I got strep throat and I went to see the doctor, and he was like, if you don't go on antibiotics right now, and he like described a series of things that would happen that resulted in your kidneys will shrivel and you will die. And I was like, I'm
Hmm.
not saying no to the antibiotics. But it was the same type of like snowball fear
Yeah.
mongering. Like he just hears like, yeah, yeah, fucking I know it's bad, but I'll get to it. But they want Hilo and Ait from the Mountain Clan to meet and start talking about peace
Yeah.
negotiations. And he's like, no, absolutely not.
Yeah. Because he's still under the impression that the mountain specifically killed Lon, and it's not just an accident. But they also get into this little spat where they start bickering back and forth. And he makes an offhand comment about how, like, oh, well, maybe you'll just, you know. And she's like what? Run off to Hispania? And he's like, I was like, okay, hold on a minute. Let's not act like you ran off to Hispania. You were selling secrets, you dummy.
Like, we've conveniently never discussed that part again. Like, the fact that she was clearly in the wrong, like, horrifically in the wrong. Like, she really fucked up. And I don't think she even realizes that she did.
No.
Like, it's
She's
really.
unconcerned with that aspect of it, only that people treated her poorly afterwards.
Yeah. She's like, why was my granda mad at me about that? Like, he was actually pretty rude. That I just wanted to be with Gerald.
God. But I think that that's pretty much it. Like, they talk about how the Royal Council wants the Mountain and No Peak to sit down and have a little chit chat, which I think they would say that even if the Mountain literally did intend to kill Lon. Because when the clans
Yeah.
are at war, nobody's having a good time.
Yeah. No, everybody's just accruing more and more property damage. Um, and she's like, just get in a room, say you're going to start negotiations that way. We can kind of stall until spring so the lantern men don't get ornery and leave and start aligning with the mountain. But also, the mountain is going to want war over before the results of the Jade audit comes out, because
Right.
it's gonna be made very obvious that they've been taking Jade and not accounting for it. So, like, they're gonna look really bad after that. So they probably want all of this to be kind of taken care of before then, so they don't lose any of the territory that they've just acquired.
And that's that chapter.
Well, before it ends, Hilo is like, "Just between us girls, like, who ended it between you and Gerald?"
Oh yeah.
And she's like, "It was mutual." Okay, just kidding.
So
It was
full of
him.
shit.
Yeah, and he's like, "I should have known." She's like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "You were always a fucking terrifying, like, robot." Like, you probably like, it's just lucky that he realized that you guys weren't meant to be before you did. And like, it's I don't even think it's that. It's just like, I don't even think he really cared about her that much. She was just
No.
giving him information. Like, I'm pretty sure he broke up with her the second they got to Espeni. He was like, "Why are you still here, by the way? Like,
He
I'm kinda
like
done."
in when she's talking about her backstory, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
As soon as they went to Espenia after she got caught selling secrets, he was like, "Well, I don't really need you anymore, so bye." And she's
Yeah.
like, "But what if I get married to you?" And he's like,
That's not on the table.
"I have to go do this with other people elsewhere."
Yeah. Yeah.
But the next chapter, we're back with Andon, and it's like track and field day at the academy. They're doing
Yeah,
their
the
like
pre-trials.
final pre-trials, that's what it is. Which is
Mhm.
like warm-ups for the final trials. And
Yeah.
Andon has a case of senioritis. He's
Yeah.
like, he's not, he doesn't want to be there. He's like half-assing everything, but also at the same time getting like new world records on everything.
Yeah. Like the one trial that he does first is like the lightness trial. And he essentially like he has to climb a 50-foot tall like wooden pole. And he just does it in seconds. And he's like, oh, this is nice. I wish I could just like sit up here for a while and be emo some more.
Yeah.
And he like jumps down and this like sound indicates that he like got the best time of the day and everyone's like, wow, oh my god, Andon, like I can never do that. And he's like, whatever. And he just
Really
kind of
not
like
big of a deal.
phones it in and keeps
Yeah.
but keeps like I think he has to do knife throwing against his crush, but his crush is really good at knife throwing, so he wins. And then he has to do this one where he has to kill 5 mice without using any other skill but channeling.
Yeah.
And it's not really described that well what channeling does. All we get is this image of Andon standing over this like fish tank or whatever that these mice are in, and he goes,
Yeah,
"Whoa!"
he's like
And then they
chasing him with his
die,
fingers.
and they all die, and they're like, "Whoa, good job!"
Uh, my note here is that Andon is so upset that he accidentally, like he's the boy is so upset and so depressed, and because of that, he accidentally got valedictorian.
Yeah. Because there's this like coveted award at the end of the day called first in class. And after he like kills his mice and he's just like sitting down being like, whoa, Lon's dead. And he's like reminding or reminiscing about last year's pre-trials when Lon was there. And he's like, I'll be here next year all day for you. And it's like, oh my God, like, why would you do that? Like, that's
And
so
now
crazy
he's
that you
not
would do
here.
it. And it's my fault.
It's my
Only my
turn, and he's
fault.
not here, and it's my fault he's dead. And then Hilo
And
shows
then,
up.
yeah, but
No,
he gets into
actually,
like
he's getting into like a ruckus with his friends because his crush that he's been barely looking at occasionally
who's
is,
so mean.
yeah, he's a real dickhead.
Like, he's such
Like he's
trash.
the kind of like asshole that willingly and like just unapologetically spits in other people's faces,
Yeah.
and
Just
he's talking shit. And finally Andon is like, stop, just stop talking shit, like, you know, that's my family, dude. And he's like, oh yeah, what are you gonna do about it, bitch? And they keep arguing and they're about to fight, and Hilo's just like, hey boys, what's going on? You guys not getting into any trouble, are you?
yeah. It's like, introduce me to your friends, Andy. Why aren't you like what's going on?
And then they kind of talk it out, and Hilo's basically like, I know that kid's dad, and that kid's dad is a real dickhead.
Kicks puppies for fun.
Yeah, like he's the kind of dude who just would kick dogs. And he's like, I don't think his son wants to be him, that's why he acts like he does. And it's like, we find out that Hilo is an expert at understanding people in ways that make them able to be controlled. Like,
Yeah.
he knows how to work his magic to get people to do what he wants them to without forcing them to. And I was like,
Yeah.
if he changes this around, like if he takes this talent and takes it away from like leading fighters and more towards the people in his inner circle or beyond that, he has the potential to be the greatest pillar that has ever been.
Totally. Like he can read people to filth and like he uses it very well in the capacity of being the horn, but that's because he's interested in like getting those people to do what he wants. I think
Right.
the interest isn't there. Maybe it will be. I don't know. I'm curious to see like how his relationship to being the pillar evolves or doesn't evolve depending on what ends up happening. But
True.
like he says to Andon, he's like, "The people you think you can count on, they let you down in a bad way, and that's hard to take. But for the most part, you give a man something to live up to. You tell him he can be more than he is now, more than other people think he'll ever be, and he'll try his goddamn best to make it true." And so he's like been using that on all of like his fingers and fists. But
Yeah.
Andon's like, "Holy shit, like I didn't realize Hilo had this kind of like empathy superpower." Like,
Yeah, but Hilo doesn't think it's a superpower. He's just like, yeah, it's just what I do.
yeah,
No big
that's
deal.
true. He hasn't recognized it as like his truest talent.
That's kind of that chapter. Like they just kind of like he goes back to school and Hilo's like, all right, well, I gotta go.
Yeah, well, Hilo gives because Andon, when he got the first in class award, he gets a little velveteen
Oh, that's
box of like
right.
an extra jade stud. And he was like, "Let me see it." And Andon gives him the box, and Hilo opens it, and Andon is like, "Ah, I really want to have a Bilbo moment right now. Fuck,
Yeah,
like that's weird." Ugh.
it's mine.
And yeah, and Hilo like fixes it to his belt, and Andon has like a lovely little moment where he like comes up on the jade. He's like, "Ooh, the rain. It feels more like sharp and tingly," and like the way that it's he kind of relates putting more jade on. It's like the world starts becoming more and more real to him. It's like with each new piece, the world kind of like sharpens into like better
Oh,
clarity, which
yeah.
was an interesting way to describe that because we haven't really like we get the description that jade kind of enhances your senses, but for them it's also like the world kind of like clicks into place in a way that
Yeah.
it does when they're not wearing it.
And he asks Hilo, he's like, man, that was wild. Is it like that every time? And he goes, no. Once you kind of reach your plateau and you have the amount of jade that you should have, it just kind of stops. He's like, damn,
Yeah.
is it like that for you? And he goes, and this is the worst ending to a chapter in this whole book. But Hilo
Yeah.
goes, I don't feel anything. It's
And
like,
it's like
oh my god.
raining.
That's not true, you idiot.
He feels very deeply. He's the person who feels the most out of anybody in this book.
Yeah.
Like he's constantly wondering why his family doesn't like care for him the way he cares for them, and like he's really a sensitive boy at heart.
But the next chapter is weird because we it
Yeah,
feels like the start of a new story arc.
true.
But it is essentially I forget this guy's name.
Tembem.
Hembem. I called him Bim Bim in my uh he is making a killing because he's like a black market jade dealer where usually he buys from like river runoff. But because there's a war on and because it's so chaotic, jade's just kind of lying around in the street and people are selling it. And in true like pawn shop fashion, he's like, "Oh, this isn't that great a quality. I'll give you $25 for it," when it's worth like 3,000. And then like he has this um moonblade? No,
Talon knife,
talon
I think.
knife. Uh
What's the difference between I guess are moon blades like swords and talon knives are
yeah,
like daggers?
yeah.
Okay.
Because I think the moonblade's described as being like a big, like those big Chinese curved swords.
Right.
Uh, but somebody's in there trying to sell a talon knife, and he's doing the, "Ooh, this isn't this poor quality. I can only give you so much for it." And that guy leaves, and then Make Tar fucking blows the door down. Like he just kicks the door down, and
Well, he comes in and he like locks the door behind him, but then he punches like through drywall to
oh
like get his because like Tembem goes and hides in the back room and he's like trying to get out the secret back door, but it's been like shut from the other end.
Mm.
And he's like, fuck, what do I do? And he like hears all this clattering in the shop and he's like, fuck's happening? And then Tar punches through the wall and like grabs this guy's hand and breaks his wrist. And so he drops the gun he's
Oh
holding.
yeah.
And then he busts through the wall, like through the wall. And like shit goes flying. And I think he like just starts breaking his kneecaps.
Yeah, and all of it is just like, at least as far as the chapter goes, it's just to the purpose of like, what you got all that Jade for, punk?
Yeah, he's like, "We've been following you for a long fucking time. We know what you're doing." He calls him a white rat, which is like a clan spy, essentially. Like
Yeah.
he knows he's working for the mountain. He's like, "You're gonna tell me everything you've been doing and for who and where, and we can do it the easy way or like the fast way or the slow way." And like Tembem is entirely uncooperative. And Tar's like, "Well, the
Okay.
slow way it is."
That's it. That is as far as we read.
Mhm.
And then in 2 weeks we finish this book. And we get to
Yeah.
spin the wheel again.
Yeah, there's not much left, like, there's
I'm very
because I don't even
excited.
think we have yeah. Yeah, me too, I'm excited to see
This,
how it sets up the next one.
yeah, this book has been a delight. But I
I
suppose,
mean
go ahead.
sorry, I was gonna say, like, we would still be reading Colleen Hoover right now.
Oof.
Can you imagine?
Actually, we would be
Dead?
finished with Colleen Hoover. This would be the last Colleen Hoover episode.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
But even
Sh
still,
we would be shells of the people we once
yeah,
were.
we would not be okay. All right, everybody. That's it for us.
Yeah,
We're
thanks
out
for
of here.
hanging out.
Thanks for hanging out. This is on YouTube now, so I don't have to tell you to go to the YouTube channel and follow
Yeah.
or subscribe or whatever it's called. You're already here.
Yeah, we've streamlined it.
All right, guys. We'll see you in 2 weeks for the finale. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.